Good afternoon, folks. We're once again in the Forward Shop in Dunoon, and another interview with Alasdair Stirling. We're just following up on where we left off last time, and coming out today in light of current events that have taken place in Catalan and in Brexit. Afternoon, Alasdair.
Good afternoon, Alasdair.
How are you doing?
I'm okay, how are you?
Good. And how would you like to start us off today?
Well, I just thought it would be interesting to consider Brexit in the light of how that might interact with the independence referendum or the independence movement.
Okay.
It's often said there's an ill wind that blows no good,
Right.
and on that basis there's some, I wouldn't like to say hope, but there's a recognition amongst the independence movement that a disastrous or calamitous Brexit could force support for independence up through the mythical 60% barrier, at which certain members of the SNP hierarchy would be happy and comfortable calling a referendum.
You think the SNP hierarchy can't see that actually as a matter of course? Because for me it's pretty obvious what's going to happen in Brexit.
Well, I'm not sure it is very obvious what's going to happen in Brexit, actually.
Really?
Because
it's tanking already. It's a bit.
well, yes, I know, but I'm not sure. But it is tanking already. It's not good already, and we're only very in the early stage. We shouldn't be in the early stages. We are in the early stages of it. But the point of the exercise is that the Brexiteers have this sense that the opportunities there for them to have this great Brexit, and we're still talking about a trade deal and cake and eat it type deals, etc. But that's for the birds.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, the EU, for all its faults and failings, and not everybody is particularly, although I am a supporter of the EU, not everybody is. But one thing you can say, whether it may be very poor at creating trade deals, but it is very keen to create trade deals. It's got 20 members, soon to be 27, potentially a trade deal with Britain, and trade deals with 60 other major trading blocs or nations, to name just the substantial core of it. But there's a dynamic behind those trade deals. And the dynamic is that if you're at Norway's end, right the way to Ukraine at the other end, the dynamic behind it is the more rights of access you want, the more obligations you must assume.
To the EU.
To the EU, yes. Yeah. So assuming the EQUIS, the body of laws, etc. So at Norway, they've got almost all the rights of access for almost all the obligations. Down at the other end of the extreme, you've got Ukraine, which got virtually no access for virtually no obligations. Were the Brexiteers, or the British nationalists in London, were they prepared to pick a point in that spectrum and say, here, this level of access we want, this level of obligation we can handle. We'll negotiate a bit here and there. The Brexiteers are right, they get that deal very easily. But that's not what they want.
Or that's not how they pitched.
It's not how they pitched it,
yes.
But it's also not how they're behaving what they want. All the stuff that they're asking for, all the suggestions they make are underwritten by a different concept. The concept is that the Brexit deal, the British deal, the new trading relationship will take rights of access from this end of the spectrum and obligations from that end of the spectrum. And thus they will have access, but with virtually no obligations. They'll have access to the free market, the single market, access to the customs union, but they'll be able to do trade deals, but they'll be able to deviate from standards, etc. That is an unlikely prospect. It's an unlikely situation to come to pass. So the reason for that is kind of obvious. If the EU agree to that, then there'll be 27 other exit demands, and there'll be 60 odd trading nations saying, well, we want a different kind of deal. So to agree to that deal is an existential end. It's an existential event to the European Union. It will bring it to an end. So they're never going to agree to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the Brexiteers probably can't realistically. They're caught in a trap of their own, a gibbet of their own construction, because they probably can't pick a point in the system at which they could do a trade deal. They find themselves in an interesting dynamic. The deal that they could do with the European Union, they cannot get through Parliament, and the deals that they could get through Parliament, the European Union will not do.
Okay.
So where does that take us? What is the likely outcome, and how would that likely outcome affect independence? Well, at the moment there are two outcomes. Having ruled out the cake and eat it deal and any realistic deal, we're left with really one thing, the World Trade, no deal World Trade Organisation.
Okay.
In itself, that's not a problem.
I'm not a big fan of the WTO or the IMF.
Well, no, neither am I, but nonetheless, that's not the big problem in the context of Brexit, because yes,
Okay.
there are problems in terms of the tariffs, etc. But they're at the tip of the iceberg. 1/8 of the iceberg, the other 7/8 below the water, the bit that sinks the SS Great Britain, as it were, the bit that hauls it down the side, that rips the seam out of the side out of the ship underneath the waterline. You get the metaphor. They're what they call TBTs or NBTs, non-technical barriers to trade, non-tariff barriers to trade, or technical barriers to trade, TBTs or NTBs.
Okay.
There are many things that include those, but the key one are what they call recognition standards. And that's the idea that we can produce a widget in Glasgow and truck it all the way to Gdansk or to the borders of Turkey or wherever, to Greece, Anatolia, to Spain, to wherever, without having to be rechecked, re-standardised, re-inspected at any point through that journey. It is the seamless trade. That's what World Trade Organisations do not cover this. And when people like Liam Fox, as he was on the TV this morning, say, we can trade under WTO rules, the Americans and the Australians, yeah, they do. But America has 55, with just the European Union, has 55 agreements dealing with MRAs.
Widgets.
Whatever, but 55
Yes.
separate agreements. Australia has 82. I think it's 85 or 82. But over 80 separate agreements dealing with MRAs. That's the key. If they don't get the MRAs, then it is calamitous. Utterly and absolutely calamitous. The widely trailed report in the FT, I can't remember who actually did it offhand, but speculates that without MRAs, we'll be looking at 50% of all trading goods and services disappearing within probably 3 months, and 3/5 of services disappearing within 3 months. This is utterly calamitous.
With no agreement at the end of Brexit.
They can have agreement, but without agreement on MRAs. There's not going to be a trade
So
deal.
what are MRAs again?
Mutual recognition agreements.
Okay, right, okay.
Mutual recognition agreements allow our standards guys in Glasgow to go and see the widget that's made in
Portugal.
No, that's made in Glasgow.
Right.
Certify that it's certificate of origin, it's quality standards, blah blah blah. Do all the certification on it, and that documentation is then good all the way through the European Union.
Right. Okay.
Or and just to make it a little bit more interesting, all the MRAs that we currently have with non-EU countries are by virtue of the EU. We don't just lose MRAs with the EU countries when we drop out without a deal,
We use the second.
but we lose all the other ones that we piggyback through Europe with. So all the ones with America, the 55 that we've got with America now, or 80 something with Australia, we lose them as well. We've got to go and recreate them. Now, to be fair, that needn't necessarily be terribly hard, but it won't happen tomorrow. And as we've discovered about just the cutting up of quotas, the Australians, despite the Brexiteers telling us that the empire is going to come back to right to our rescue, the notion that the Falkland Islands and the Turks and Caicos Islands are going to make up the trade from Bavaria is just a fantasy. But hey, we're all dealing in fantasy at this point, so be it. So the idea that Brexit is going to result in a trade deal by 2018, or it actually really has to be autumn 2018, in order to get it put through put through the European Parliament, the idea that that's going to result in a trade deal of any character is a fantasy.
That's nothing.
There's absolutely nothing. No, they're not going to do. They're not going to.
The time scales on that.
No, and they're not even going to get to talk about it until December. So, and really, you can write out Christmas and New Year.
Yeah.
So we're talking really the middle of January. So we're talking 8 months to do all this. It's not going to happen.
No.
So what are the British nationalists going to pitch for? And the answer is this: most likely, they're going to have some form of transition agreement. And what transition really means is MRAs.
Okay.
The idea is to keep the MRAs going and take whatever we need to take. I mean, basically, dear old, despite all the bravado and all the talk, dear old David Davis is going to go into the room with Bernie, pull down his trousers, bend over, pull the cheeks of his bottom apart, and wait and see what happens.
That's a bit too visual for me, mate.
But that's what's going to happen.
Yes. Okay.
You know, and whatever Bernie asks for, 90 billion euros, we'll pay. It's that simple. We will pay it. Because the possibility that we will not have MRAs in March next year, or March of 2019, is just too horrific to think about. And even that level of reality will intrude on even the Brexiteers. You know, even the Brexiteers are going to have to deal with that level of reality. It may not be very pleasant for them, but they will have to deal with it. So, what does this mean? What does that actually mean for the independence? If Brexit results in that calamitous lack of reason, and I would put Goldman, the rating agencies now put it at about 25% chance that will happen, because there are good reasons why the Brexiteers. First of all, it's a heady cocktail of lack of understanding, sheer stupidity, willful delusion, and bravado. British bulldog, British bravado.
Or is it just blatant boy club bravado?
No.
Because most of that stuff is rhetoric, and it's what they've grown up with. It's how they've been educated.
It's not even so much that. It's more. There's a lot of talk that Brexit was caused by xenophobia. And there's some truth to that. Okay. The idea that let's get rid of the Romanians now, they're different from us, let's send them home. There's an element of that, and probably an element of racism as well. But the biggest element of it, in my view anyway, the biggest element of Brexit was British nationalism.
Yes.
The resurgent, and in large part, interestingly, perhaps for another discussion for another day, but interestingly, the large one of the big motivators of that, the drivers of that development of British nationalism was the referendum in Scotland.
Yes.
However, what does it mean for Scottish nationalism? What does it mean for the independence movement? You don't. Sorry, I was saying that the prospects of that deal. One would think that rationally, this would not come to pass. That politicians, wary of their own voters, wary enough of their own voters, the idea of shutting down the airline, chucking millions. I mean, we're talking 8 to 10 million people unemployed within a quarter. It is cataclysmic. Now, you would think that the reality would seize hold of them, but the price that you pay, like I say, I had a very graphic vision of David Davis, but.
Let's not do that again.
No, let's not do it again. But, well, actually, I don't.
No.
Anyway,
okay.
The point about it, is that.
What a pill.
Yeah. Excuse me. It is a real prospect. The reluctance to accept the European Court of Justice, which it would be which has to invigilate the standards, the MRAs. It has to. I mean, in all but name, they may cook up some sort of thing, but it will be the European Court of Justice, and the big dog gets to do what he wants. So there is a real chance that they won't do it, and if they don't do it, and we do have that cataclysmic collapse, then obviously, at that point, support for independence will rise dramatically.
Why?
Because we would have the capacity to say, please, we want to go back into the European Union. And the Europeans would probably say, yeah, okay. It would suit their agenda quite happily to have another 28th member.
Could it be could it also be flipped and saying you're deserting the country that's fed you, bred you, kept you afloat all these centuries? You're leaving us now in our direst need. How dare you? How
They
could
might
you?
they might well, but when you're looking at, I mean, we're talking about roughly 8 million people unemployed. We're probably talking about 1 million people in Scotland, give or take.
Mm.
So 800,000, 1 million. We are routinely out. We consider unemployment horrendous over 150,000.
Yeah.
Now, go into the pub, go into the supermarket, and pick 1 in 10, and say you'll be unemployed. But you don't have to be. It's voluntary. You can easily do that, and jobs will come flooding north, because why would you relocate to Germany or France or wherever when you can stay in an English-speaking jurisdiction and get the same access that you have?
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, but it's also unlikely, because however daft you might think these people are, we're not yet at a point where it is the most likely outcome. The most likely outcome is a stonking bill,
Yeah.
acceptance of almost all the European institutions for the foreseeable future. They talk about 2 years, nonsense. We're talking maybe 10 years.
The agreement has to be completed within 2 years.
Yeah, the agreement has, but they're talking about a transition period of 2 years.
Post agreement.
Nonsense. That there's no prospect of doing it in 2
So they're
years.
actually asking for an extension then, which is they're right within the process.
They're asking for extension, but not through the process. What they're saying is, we want an extension. We want to go through the symbolic form of leaving the European Union, so that we can say we've fulfilled. But we don't really want to leave yet, because if we do, we know it's a calamity.
Okay. Right. All right.
It's not quite the same as the point you're making, but you know they are going to leave, but they're not going to leave in the concept that they say, well, goodbye. They're just going to leave, and I've left, but I'm really still here. We won't get to make the laws, but we will get to enjoy all the benefits. And on that basis, the effect to trade, the effect will be dramatically minimised. It's still going to be bad. It's still going to be a difficult thing to deal with, but it's not going to be 50% of goods and services and 60% of trade. It's not going to be 50% of goods and services and 60% of trade. It's just not. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a significantly different figure. It's a significantly different figure, probably in the region of 10, 12%, something like that. The idea that that kind of Brexit, that they're not going to be able to say to the middle class, etc., run with it, give us a chance, see how Brexit turns out, we're still in the negotiations. The idea that between now and 2021, that Brexit is going to develop support for independence to such an extent that it will make a referendum a gimme is unlikely, in short. So, yes, it's possible with a cataclysmic, calamitous Brexit, which is still a real possibility now, but it is the unlikely outcome still. The most likely outcome is that Britain will muddle along and they'll be able to sell to wavering independence supporters, look, it's bad, but we've got it in hand, we're doing it, we're getting it right. And the Labour Party will be saying, giving their spiel, etc. So, in short, what I'm saying is that to rest your hopes on independence on Brexit is a fool's errand at this moment.
Thank you. That's interesting because of what took place at the recent S&P conference and the statement from Nicola on, let's just wait and see, essentially. Mm. And yeah, there's some information sheet at the forward shop. There's a white paper on the future of Europe, reflections and scenarios for the EU 2027 by 2025. We've got one on how the European works. These are all from the EU actually, and how the European Union works. Your guide to the EU institutions. Mapping the cost of non-Europe 2014 to 2019. What would have happened if there had not been an EU agreement in there, which is actually quite interesting reading, and actually it would probably cover a lot of what you said about MRAs. And then there's the very important UK withdrawal from the European Union, legal and procedural issues. And this is the EU.
Sounds like a page turner.
It's a page turner, it seriously is. But that is actually very insightful. I'll leave a link up to this one in the low bar after this, once the video goes live. And I would suggest that everyone reads this page turner to get up to date on what actually are the basic facts on the withdrawal process. Because I think it can pull the wool over our eyes if we don't actually know what the procedures are.
Yeah.
And we need to know these.
Well, yes.
I'm hoping to try and get Mike Russell in soon to have a chat with Mike and see and have a see what he says about the whole process. And anyway, so thanks, Alasdair, and we'll chat again soon. Are you telling me to cut off now? Okay, right. See you later. Bye bye.